You folks here to clean up after the show? The audience chuckled. The host, Chad Walker, smirked wide as he leaned into his mic, eyes locked on the Monroe family. Elijah's jaw didn't move, but his fingers twitched, barely. Tanya glanced at their kids, Isaiah and Ava, both standing tall but frozen under the hot studio lights. A producer's assistant rushed over, whispering, "Contestants, to the podium, please." The laughter hadn't faded. Chad turned back toward the cameras. "Well, folks, looks like we've got a surprise family tonight. Let's hope they're better at trivia than wardrobe." Another burst of laughter. Ava's lip quivered. Isaiah reached to hold her hand. Elijah placed one hand gently on the buzzer, the other gripping the edge of the podium, knuckles pale. What the cameras didn't catch was the red marker someone had used backstage, crossing out Monroe on their dressing room door. Replaced with one word, helpers. They didn't speak. But their silence was heavier than any protest. Just before the first question began, Chad leaned over again. "Smile big, Monroe fam. This is your 15 minutes of, whatever this is." Then he winked, mocking. Elijah didn't smile. He looked straight ahead and said calmly, "Let's begin." And then, Ava lifted her chin, and the first shock came. The audience stopped laughing, but no one knew yet, the game had just begun. The first question was science-based. Before Chad could even finish reading it, Ava pressed the buzzer. "Isaac Newton's third law," she said, voice clear. Chad blinked. That is, correct." A ripple of surprise passed through the audience. A few polite claps. Chad cleared his throat. "Beginner's luck," he muttered under breath, still smiling stiffly. "Next up, history." Isaiah leaned forward, calm as stone. "The Treaty of Versailles, signed June 28, 1919. In the Hall of Mirrors, Palace of Versailles." The timer hadn't even reached 10 seconds. "Correct," Chad replied slowly. One audience member raised a brow. Another lowered their phone, no longer recording for mockery. Tanya stepped in for the next question, biomedical trivia. She barely hesitated before answering. CRISPR-Cas9. Gene editing tool. Another right answer. Elijah hadn't even spoken yet. Backstage, a junior producer whispered to another, "Why didn't anyone run a background check on them?" The second producer, pale now, stammered, "We thought they were just lucky picks." A murmur swelled in the studio. And then something shifted. Isaiah's ID badge, half tucked into his pocket, fell out as he stepped back from the buzzer. A sharp-eyed cameraman zoomed in. "Yale Law," someone gasped from the crowd. But Chad kept smiling, tight, anxious now. Elijah looked down at the badge, picked it up slowly, and handed it to his son with a small nod. No one had noticed the tear in the corner of their name card earlier, the one slashed with red ink. But it was still there. And it hadn't been forgotten. One more question, and the crowd wouldn't be the same. Final round. The scoreboard showed a tie, unprecedented. Chad adjusted his mic, trying to reclaim control. Last question. Winner takes all. He paused, then grinned smugly. It's a pop culture round. Let's see if our scholars know anything normal. He barely finished when Elijah pressed the buzzer. 1955, Chuck Berry released Maybelline. One of the first rock and roll hits to top both the R&B and pop charts. Dead silence. Correct, the judge confirmed, voice almost reverent. A heavy breath fell over the room. Chad didn't move. Elijah stepped forward. Reached into his inside pocket. Pulled out a slim envelope. Placed it on the podium. The producer opened it. Inside, a guest honor letter from the show's parent network, addressed to Professor Elijah Monroe, AI Department Chair, MIT. I was invited here as a guest. Not a punchline, Elijah said. He looked at Chad. The thing you laughed at, is the reason your show still has a license to air. Ava stood beside him. Tanya placed a hand on her shoulder. Isaiah folded his arms. The applause didn't erupt, it emerged slowly, reluctantly, until it consumed the room. Some audience members stood. A few lowered their heads. Chad took a step back. Then bowed. And for the first time, he didn't have anything clever to say. But what came next wasn't about winning. It was about something deeper than any game could measure. When the cameras cut to commercial, no one moved. The studio lights dimmed, but the silence remained electric. Ava turned to Elijah, whispering, "Do we leave now?" He shook his head gently. "Not yet." A staffer approached them hesitantly, holding the red-marked name card that had been defaced backstage. "Sir, we didn't know," she said, trembling. Isaiah took the card and looked at the scarlet ink. He didn't tear it. He didn't throw it away. He folded it cleanly and slipped it into his coat pocket. Chad stepped forward, his eyes darting between them and the crew still watching from the sidelines. "Professor Monroe," he began. "I want to." "You don't have to say anything," Elijah interrupted, voice even. "But you can choose what happens next." Chad looked down. Then to the audience. "I'll start with this." He turned to the camera and faced it directly. "I apologize. To the Monroe family. And to everyone watching, for being blind to what was in front of me." Behind him, the producer nodded silently. And that was when something else happened. The audience began to clap, slow, deliberate, not for entertainment, but respect. The show didn't air the next week. Instead, a special re-edit was broadcast, this time, opening not with Chad's jokes, but with the Monroe family's answers, their quiet dignity, and the crowd's stunned transformation. Clips of Ava's precision, Isaiah's poise, Tanya's calm intellect, and Elijah's final words went viral. Comments poured in. This wasn't just a game show. This was a reckoning. Meanwhile, Elijah received an email from the network's president. Subject line, "We owe you more than airtime." At MIT, students organized a panel called, "What We Don't See, Genius Behind the Silence," with Elijah as keynote speaker. He brought the red-slashed-name card with him, still folded. Still unburned. During the final minute of his talk, Elijah held it up. This card wasn't torn. Just marked. And marks fade. He didn't drop the card. He placed it into the display case beside the podium. A single spotlight caught the edge of it as he stepped away, hands free. And that silence, for once, wasn't absence. It was memory. The Monroe family never asked for applause. They didn't shout, didn't storm off, didn't beg to be seen. They simply showed the world who they already were, and let truth speak louder than mockery. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, their quiet strength echoed further than any insult. If their story moved you, share your voice in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal what lies beneath the surface. And sometimes, the loudest moment, is when the room falls silent around a folded piece of paper.